goes back to like ancient, some of the most ancient synagogues and Jewish temples that they find in the Levant, in Israel today, and around the Levant today, have all this, kind of pseudo-pagan Judeo imagery. So,
well,
yeah.
they seem to my, ignorant outsider perspective, seems to me like the Jewish faith is a little more comfortable with like mysticism overlapping with the mainstream faith than like Christianity. A lot of mainstream Christians are really bothered when you start overlapping with things like the zodiac, etc.
Right.
But it seems to me, as just an outsider, that the Jewish faith has always been a little more comfortable with the overlap, because they have the Kabbalah and all of these things. They're not considered antithetical, I guess, to the mainstream belief system.
Right. Well, even like when you mentioned Kabbalah, like even the most orthodox Judaism has Kabbalah and has Zohar. They reserve it for married adults, whereas like more, let's say, liberal or heretical forms of Judaism, like Sabbateanism, allow children and young people to study Kabbalah. So whereas Christianity, more orthodox Christians, like you said, tend to not have any mysticism for anybody, even adults. And it's only like more alternative people. But, and I might, this might offend some more mainstream Christians, but really we need to question, in like an anthropological sense, the terms monotheist and polytheist. Okay, let's throw pagan out, because pagan is a Latin term that means country folk and the country religion. Okay?
Is it really? I didn't know
technically, like look into etymology of pagan, paganes. It means of the country. Oh, it's like barbarian, right? Barbarian is like, oh, they got beards and they talk like sheep, like goats, ba ba ba. So it's the same thing with pick me up. Where am I talking about, Jeff?
we were talking about monotheism, polytheism,
right? So pagan,
mysticism.
So pagan is the country guy with the beard who talks like ba ba ba, the barbarian. So it doesn't even have a real implication in its etymology and its word origin with multiplicity of deity. So let's talk about monotheism and polytheism, right? Polytheism, the belief in a pantheon or multiple deities. Polytheists, although they believe in multiple entities, they always believe in a supreme one deity or set of deities over the pantheon or hierarchy of deities. So one might think of that as kind of like pseudo-monotheism. Then when you study the monotheistic tradition with the Abrahamic faiths of Judaism and Islam and Christianity, we have angels. And why can't we think of the angels as lesser deities? So there's God, the creator, the Father, who's a supreme deity. And, ancient Jews actually did believe in a goddess, a consort of Yahweh. Yeah. And now this is a controversial thing in the history of Judaism. And if you read the Old Testament, I mean, it's kind of like, that's part of like how the Jewish people or Israel are falling out of favor with Yahweh, is because they get too comfortable with the worship of Yahweh's wife and the angels. And a lot of the time the Bible refers to this as Baal worship or Asherah worship. They'll say, oh, they went to the high places and set up poles in the groves to Asherah, which is a reference to the mother goddess, Mother Earth, as like a heresy within Judaism. And, maybe, making that goddess above Yahweh is the heresy. But the fact that the ancient Jews had both is maybe bespeaking a more complexity of what monotheism and polytheism is. And basically what I'm saying is what we call monotheism is just an evolution of thinking out of polytheism. Basically, Judaism, the original monotheism, is polytheists choosing we're only going to worship the chief male deity.
But they accept that there are other deities. They have just chosen to focus on the one.
They've relegated those other deities in the pantheon to angels, saints, Mother Mary, sometimes maybe, and demons and fallen angels. And
Right,
some
wow.
of them are fallen angels and demons, and some of them are gods or angels. Whatever,
Yeah, that's, you mentioned the saints, and that has always, I mean, like if you look, I don't know if it's common now with mainstream Catholics, I'm not sure, but like if you look at back in the day, I mean, they would talk about the saints basically, after they died. To me, it seems like they're talking about like a deity, like almost like a minor god of sorts, or at least like a spiritually potent thing that is actually like still active. Like they pray to the saint, as its own empowered being. And so, yeah, I know it's just that whole thing has always been really interesting to me. And I've never really understood why today, when you try to talk about mysticism, esotericism, hermeticism, all these things, it's so often met with this idea that like you must be up to something shady, when it's like, it seems to me like it was always kind of the tradition for a long time within Christianity and Judaism.
Well, that gets back into what you said before about occultism, and like the implication, people have a false implication that it means something dark or negative. Occult means that is which is hidden. So certainly much dark side spiritualism, most, what I would call Satanism or evil dabbling in witchcraft is done in the dark, is done hidden, is occult. But not everything that's hidden or occult or private is dark and evil. So, look at, the temple, the Solomon's temple, the Jews, they're holy. The holiest place of the temple was private. I think even in a Catholic church, the tabernacle section of a Catholic church, which would relate to the holiest of holies in the Jewish temple, which is where the Ark of the Covenant was a place where only the high priests and the Levites could go, only like one time a year, a certain time a year. So something being hidden or private, to me, isn't necessarily an implication of evil.
Isn't in all four gospels, I believe, at least a couple of them, doesn't Jesus, isn't he like outright quoted as talking about secret teachings that he holds for his immediate disciples, or I forget exactly how it was phrased.
I can't put my finger on the exact scripture to cite it, but yeah, he does. Yes, absolutely. Mysticism, I think Christianity is mysticism. I think actually it's heresy out of Judaism, if I can call Christianity partially, at least, a heresy out of Judaism. I'm not saying in toto it's that, but at least at one point in the history of Christianity, it was a heresy out of Judaism. And in that sense, I think that it was mystical. I think it was taking the mysticism of Judaism to its natural, logical, its logical evolution.
That's really interesting.
Because, Judaism outside, like Torah doesn't talk about a Trinity, okay? Talmud doesn't talk about a Trinity. Talmud is rabbinical commentary on the Torah or Tanakh. So the Old Testament doesn't talk about Trinity. But Zohar or Kabbalah does talk about the Trinity of God. And Christianity talks about the Trinity of God from a very early point in history. So I do think that, yeah, Christianity is based on some very mystical streams within not only Judaism, but within the greater Middle Eastern milieu, because there was still polytheistic cults going on at the time. Of course, there was the Baptist cults that followed John the Baptist and stayed with John the Baptist. There was the angel worshippers, the Yazidis. So that's a very ancient pre-Judaic tradition, really.
That's fascinating.